You earlier with the you haven't changed this one.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Melaka Reserve 5, she's not inside here. She got kicked out.
Host, can you admit the Melaka Reserve number 5? Sorry, because I don't have any host powers, so I cannot admit.
Yeah, readmit them.
Okay, so I presume I can start now. All right, very good morning to everyone. I'm pleased to welcome all of you to the virtual English language debate competition Tan Sri Datuk Seri Panglima Dr. Abdul Rahman Ashad Challenge Trophy for national levels 2021. As you all know, the motion of today's debate is this House believes that developing states should nationalize their energy resources. Representing the government, first of all, from Kedah, we have our first speaker, Jauzah Kamila binti Muhammad Zaki, our second speaker, Sarah Surayan, and our third speaker, Vishnu Ram. And speaking for the opposition will be from Melaka. We have our first speaker, Sarah Hazika binti Azim, the second speaker, Lim Excelings, and our third speaker, Gan Kahong. I apologize if I mispronounce any of your names. On behalf of the House, I would like to extend a special welcome to our adjudicators. First of all, we have our Chief Adjudicator, Mr. Bobby Chan. Then we have Adjudicator Nur Afika and Adjudicator Rabiatul. And I'm your Speaker of the House today. And we have the host as the timekeeper. And before we begin, I would like to read out a few of the important rules for today's debate. Each debater will have 8 minutes to deliver their full speech and 4 minutes in delivering their reply speeches. And the third debaters from each team shall not introduce any new arguments in their speech. Their role is only to rebut the opponent and to defend the position of your team. And while a debater is speaking, you can offer POIs, points of interjection. And the debater who is currently speaking may either decline or accept. If you wish to decline, you just say declined and you carry on with your speech. If you wish to accept, you say, you just address the person like yes or carry on or whatever. And keep in mind, please, that your POIs have to be short, just one quick question. Don't drag your POIs on too long to avoid wasting their time. After all the debaters have spoken once, the first or second debater of each team will deliver their reply speech, starting with the opposition and then the government. The timekeeper will ring the bell once after the first minute of each speech and at the end of the 7th minute to signal that the time allocated for the POIs, which means you can only offer POIs between the first and the 7th minute. And at the end of the 8th minute, the bell will be rung twice to signal the end of your speech. A maximum of 3 minutes will be given to both teams to prepare for your reply speeches. And during the reply speech, the timekeeper will ring the bell once at the 3rd minute to signal that the debater has 1 minute left. And no POIs are no POIs are allowed during the reply speech. Please keep in mind. At the end of your reply speech, which is at the end of the 4th minute, the bell will be rung twice to signal the end of the debate. And without further ado, I would like to call upon the first government speaker to deliver the resolution, define its terms, and to outline the government's case.
Thank you to Mr. Speaker. A very good day I bid to the members of the House. The motion for today is this House believes that developing states should nationalize their energy resources. Ladies and gentlemen, in these pandemic-ridden times, first world countries, namely the UK, are facing fuel shortages. Unprecedented power cuts in northern China left millions without electricity, ground factories to a halt, and sent workers to the hospital with carbon monoxide poisoning after ventilators lost power during a blackout. And in seasonal climates, energy poverty continues to claim 1.7 million lives every year due to winter freezes. Ladies and gentlemen, this clearly shows the fragility of the energy market that as a whole encompasses socioeconomic impacts and concerns on sustainability. The gravity of these impacts are not only exclusive to first world countries, rather the possibilities of these problems arising in Malaysia as a developing country remain a growing concern. The biggest disparity that we can see here is the electricity coverage in poor states, which is about 79%, compared to the developed states, that is about 99.62%. And ladies and gentlemen, it should be highlighted that national budgets and incentives are not the cure-all for the lack of development. On our side, we provide the House with a long-term solution, and that is a more regulated operation through the federal management that helps to supply state with a diverse revenue and improves the people's quality of life. Similar to Petronas, where the oil and gas sector supplied about 35% of the federal revenue in 2011. This brings us to our burden of proof. No, thank you. One, we ensure that developing states are able to stand up on their own without depending on their revenue on these energy resources. Number two, we ensure that the gap between the developing states and developed states can be overcome. For all those reasons, the government wholeheartedly support the motion. This House believes that, no, thank you, developing states should nationalize their energy resources to overcome the disparity in sustainable development. Now, let's start by defining the key words in the motion. We define developing states as the states in Malaysia under the federal government that have a HDI below the national average, and this includes Kedah, Perlis, Pahang, Terengganu, Kelantan, Sarawak, and Sabah. HDI refers to an index of life expectancy, education, and per capita income. And we define nationalization as the transfer of ownership from the local governments into the central government, and energy resources are the resources that are mainly used in Malaysia, that is natural gas, coal, oil, hydro, and renewable energy. Now, for our mechanism, we're going to keep the status quo of our already nationalized energy sectors, that is natural gas and oil, which is currently under the operation of Petronas. And for our not yet nationalized energy resources, we're going to introduce a 5-year transition period, so that after this transition period, we're going to look back at the current HDI and the HDI after 15 years to see if the developing states have improved over the past 15 years national average. And if it hasn't, then it will remain nationalized and considered as a developing state. We want to do this because we want to ease the burden on developing states with such abrupt loss of eternal revenue, and also reduce the dependency. Yes.
Okay, how can you actually know that this nationalization can actually stand on their own? So can you please explain that?
Okay, thank you. The opposition clearly hasn't been hearing to what the government has been saying before. We explained to you, we give you the example of Petronas, that is already a nationalized energy sectors, that is natural gas and oil. And in 2011, it contributed to 35% of the government's revenue. And I hope that answers your PI. Now, continuing, I said that we want to reduce dependency of these states on their energy resources by bringing the responsibility of the decision-making in exploration, development, and production of these energy resources fully into the hands of the Energy Commission. And for Sarawak Energy Berhad, that is currently owned by the Sarawak state government, it should also transition under the same commission. And we're going to keep the status quo of a TNB to act as a bridge between the energy resources owned by the federal government and the consumers that requires these energy resources. For royalties, we're going to give them out. No, thank you. We're going to give them out only as a compensation or gratitude for these states. Now, our first point for the government is that nationalization of energy resources leads to economic sustainability. Ladies and gentlemen, leading up to the year of 2030, we want to ensure that developing states have both a stable and sustainable source of income. And we do so by reducing the focus of, for example, Sarawak on their oil and natural gas exports by giving the state's government incentives and secured supply of energy resources to go further into sectors that are already key players in the state's economy. For starters, no thank you. We see that Kedah drives logistics and economy services, Terengganu is their fishing industry, and Sabah and Sarawak is for ecotourism. All of these sectors are much more reliable than the limited, finite, sparse nature of energy, non-renewable energy resources. We would also like to emphasize that these non-renewable energy resources are not something that the state should be depending on in terms of their main revenue. One day it's going to run dry, and if the states are fully dependent on it, their economy will collapse, and at that point it will be very, very difficult to recover. We say that it is never the best option for any state, especially a developing state, to fully depend on these energy resources as their main revenue. No, thank you. Because they are also vulnerable in a global energy market with high oil prices and high demands for export. In terms of sustainability for the people of the state, we say we also provide them with job opportunities that are secure and can generate a better per capita income. And if we nationalize another energy resource of ours, such as biomass, that we expected to increase to about 100 million dry ton by the year of 2020, we can create jobs, we can move towards a further path. And for reducing oil and gas usage, our biomass is overall a 30 billion ringgit opportunity. No, thank you. A 30 billion ringgit opportunity, and it can create 66,000 new jobs, and will also become one of the powerhouses of the palm oil industry by nationalizing the energy resources. And this also includes the majority of the developing states, that is Sarawak, Sabah, and Pahang. And by doing this, our citizens that live in these rural areas aren't left behind, as they play a larger role in our plan towards an equal country. We also want to improve the infrastructures that exist in developing states as a whole. Of course, it is undeniable that the government will commoditize these resources. No, thank you. But we do so as a way to fund these development programs in these states, because the advantage of developing states is their energy resources are the very key towards development. I mentioned the various sectors that the states could capitalize on before, and they require energy for it to flourish. In our world, we use energy to optimize sectors not for revenue, but for return of investment by developing a higher quality of infrastructure. To recap, our side for the government is simple. We want the best for these states and its people, and we do so by uniting as one, by lending them a helping hand and ensuring them a stable, sustainable, and reliable economy to overcome the disparity of states in Malaysia. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we have never been prouder to propose the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much, First Speaker of the government. I would now like to call upon the First Speaker of the opposition to deliver their speech.
Am I audible?
Yes, you may proceed.
Can you guys hear me? Okay. Now, ladies and gentlemen, have you ever thought about improving developing states in a quicker and in a more efficient way? And that is why I, as the first speaker from the opposition side, would like to provide you with one solution, and to ease this problem, basically, is by privatizing these companies. So before I move on, a very good morning I bid to everyone here present today. So our stand and our goal is just one thing, is to solve the problem by building up an economy to help the developing states even faster and even better. So let me just redefine from what the Prime Minister has stated before. So for the nationalization, right, she hasn't said about how this thing can control the private, how nationalization is a process of taking privately controlled companies, industries, and assets and putting them under the control of the government. Often for these companies or assets that are taken over, there's little or no compensation is provided to the previous owners. So I accept the definition given for the privatized and also nationalized companies, but for the developing states, it's actually a small country but growing population. There's limited resources and vulnerability to external shocks and excessive dependence on international trade and fragile environments. And that is why we have proven that it can actually privatization is to build a sustainable economy to help the developing states. So let me move on with our burden of proof. Our burden of proof is simple. We have 3 points here. We want to prove that Can privatized companies help to build the economy better? Rejected. Is streamliness, and also it maximizes efficiency. And third of all, it's also for the better long-term decision for the state and also for the company if we privatize these companies. So for the stakeholders, we include the company producing the energy. Second is the owners of these privatized companies, and third, the government. Fourth, the country, and fifth, the citizens. So our mechanism is simple. We privatize all existing state-owned energy resources, companies, for example, oil, gas, coal, electricity, and water, and privatize all energy resources in state developing state resources owned by state. So to clarify something, right? Energy is a necessity to all consumers. That means it is needed, not wanted, and that is why price is strongly regulated by the government, regardless if we were in the government side or in the opposition side. So let me move on with the rebuttals. The Prime Minister has stated that it can ensure the developing states to stand on their own, but I do not see how this
please.
rejected, how this can actually stand on their own, because they're using a large amount of money for this government to nationalize it. So in the first place, this government cannot actually nationalize it because they do not have much money to improve and also to actually have the economic growth of these countries. And she stated a lot of statistics, which means that she didn't even like visualize every single thing from what she stated from her statistics, and also proven that the government side do not show that nationalization is better to nationalize these companies. So moving on, I'm done with my rebuttal, so I'm moving on with my argument. So for my first argument will be, it will create competition. Why? Because the existence of other companies is what ensures the stability of the economy. So these companies are big, basically. And if one fails, you have another company. So that these consumers can actually get the energy resources from other companies. So for the impacts, I have two, is to ensure the company has a fail-safe if anything goes wrong. And for that, energy is very crucial. So every citizen will be using these resources in different companies. I'll accept you later. And these big companies exist. That means energy resources are essentials for these consumers to get from these companies. Yes?
Wouldn't a nationalized scheme bring the competition to a much more global level?
No, I don't think so, because nationalization, they are lack of competition because they certainly have one company that are controlled by the government, and that is why it shows that the government side do not actually research more about this. So it forces the companies to be better and more sustainable in the future and also in the long-term benefit. So let me compare it with the government side, right? The government side do not have competition. The government will not strive in the market and will not have the ability to produce more energy resources and lack of economic growth if nationalize it. And it will not have a better good management, and they will not be a better company in the future ahead. So what happened in Venezuela, right? Venezuela nationalized PDVSA, and it happens that it dropped drastically over time because due to the fact that it nationalized the companies, and before this they privatized, and it is better compared to they nationalize it right now. And that is why it's one of the examples for me to prove my point. So the impact, the competition serves as a benefit to the country and its consumers, and the competition means companies have an inclination and motivation to gradually improve to outperform its competitors. So the importance is that competition maintains the quality and output of energy of these companies and also makes the company better. And when the better the companies develop, right, the better the economy of these developed states, because they are better companies, they're making better decisions. And developed states will be achieved if they can achieve to have privatization in these companies. So let me move on with my other impacts is actually to promote the development of companies, thus developing the country, right? Why? Because when there's a competition, there will be better management and there will be better hiring of staff to guarantee success. And also there will be healthy growth from this competition and able to distribute energy at a sustainable rate. And for this, when the companies have more revenue, right, then there will be more tax. When there will be more tax, then this government can take the tax and also fund the also fund them for the citizens, for them to
AOI, please.
citizens later, miss. So the government, right, they collect tax when a company grows bigger. When the company grows bigger, more revenue by the company means more tax for the government. And it also helps the government to actually ensure that the people can survive in poverty areas and so on. So this solves the problem because it builds a sustainable economy, companies are growing and caters to the people, and more tax for the government. And also for the long-term success, the privatized companies can ensure you a better efficiency and also better economic growth. So the companies will continue to grow and last in the long-term benefit. So it helps the developing states to achieve better companies in the future ahead. So to point out why the government side do not have a much proper stand compared to our side, because their mechanism is not that is relevant, but not completely into what we are discussing for. What we're discussing is that how we can actually privatize or nationalize these companies into having a better company in the future. And that is why our stand is better, because privatizing companies have better efficiency and also having better economic growth in the future. And my deputy Prime Minister will explain further about how this can prevent bad government management. And with that, I would very much proud to oppose. That's all from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, First Speaker of the Opposition. Now, I would like to call upon the second Speaker of the government to deliver their speech.
Am I audible? Ladies and gentlemen, members of the House, there is an urgent need to overcome the disparity in sustainable development across the developing states in Malaysia, and we do so by nationalizing these energy resources. Concerning the statements given by side opposition, they firstly tell you that they should be privatizing the companies in order to maximize efficiency and create competition. However, on our side, you are essentially telling us to take the developing states, tell the developing states to give up their energy resources to a foreign, private, individual, capitalistic mind that does not look over the underprivileged whatsoever. We tell you that that is a very dangerous move by side opposition. And it also has to be clear that in status quo, the state-owned resources are firstly under state-owned companies and secondly under publicly licensed companies. And we do so by uniting those companies into a nationalized scheme in order to want to secure a more sustainable economy, and number two, which I will be pointing out, a more social development, and number three, regarding the safeguard of our environment. They also tell you that it should maximize efficiency and make more revenue. However, we tell you that with more competition, these types of companies are going to suck up all the energy resources from the already poor states, and in the end, their energy resources are going to run dry at the end of the day. So we tell you that that is a never sustainable option for the developing state, nor for the country of Malaysia. So moving on to what we have to say. No, thank you. So the second point from side government is about social development. Ladies and gentlemen, the absolute poverty rate in Sabah stands at 25.3% and in Kelantan at 21.1%, which means over 1 million Sabahans and 1 in 5 people in Kelantan are currently living in absolute poverty. They face severe deprivation of their basic human needs: food, safe drinking water, sanitation facilities, health, education, and information. This poverty, however, does not only depend on income, but also on access to services, which we will highlight. Inequality in access to services like electricity supply and fuel as the basic resource for social development exists in our country. Nationalizing energy resources in these developing states serves to expand the access to these resources into public services that cater to social development. Why do we say so? Two arguments. Firstly, capitalizing on energy resources is never the best option for developing states. Number two, we tell you that public services depend on those energy resources. First argument, in status quo, the Energy Commission of Malaysia only regulates energy resources, but has no jurisdiction in decision-making as to where those energy resources go to and as to who develops them. With a nationalized scheme, all this harvested information can finally be put towards making accurate decisions in addressing the problems for the supply of energy resources towards the more needy states, the developing states, and therefore allowing a more equal development of infrastructure and services. Individual developing states are currently pressured with high demands on exports, no thank you, and need for immediate income. They mark up base prices on the resources, which leaves utility companies that actually serve the public with a lack of reliable energy mix and uncertainty in expanding their services. This impacts the quality of living in the people of the developing states and resulting in more money channeled to address these issues, resulting in a vicious cycle. In addition, we tell you that a scandal of electricity theft in state-owned Sarawak Energy Berhad incurred losses on the state of up to 81 million ringgit, which is a big blow for a developing state to handle on its own. We tell you that in status quo, they have to handle that on their own. And nationalizing can help distribute this loss evenly, alleviating the burden on Sarawak. We say that privatization is not an option because we tell you that nationalizing will look towards the states and help them. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you know that we're living in a developing states, and right now the motion is about developing states. So can you please clarify how can you solve the problem of 81 million ringgit from the government?
We tell you that the burden should never be placed on the developing state. Rather, the burden and the risk that the state is taking can now be on the federal government in order to alleviate that burden from the developing states that are already poor. So coming to our second argument, utility companies that extend to the people of rural Malaysia recognize that by nationalizing energy resources, we secure a reliable energy mix for utility companies, unlike privatization when they have to mark up base prices for our utility companies. Security to expand the coverage under a nationalized scheme and control utility prices to make them more affordable and attainable to all. Drawing a parallel between nationalized resources and state-owned resources. TNB in Peninsular Malaysia controls a nationalized energy mix, which includes hydroelectric power plants, natural gases, and crude oil, managed to ensure 99% electricity coverage. Whereas state-owned Sarawak Energy Berhad that mines directly on coal of Sarawak can only manage 79% coverage. This calls for nationalization to standardize the development. There is an urgency to reach to these demographics, to not leave them behind in development. We tell you that by privatization, you are essentially leaving behind on the people that don't have access to resources. Energy access is a basic human right, a right to basic healthcare that runs on electricity, amenities in improving education, and transportation to access basic commodities. Access to more affordable energy resources for these purposes comes with nationalization, and Sai government seeks to achieve that. Moving on to the third point on the environment, ladies and gentlemen, by leaving energy resources operated on their own with individual ownership, either no thank you, state operations or licensed operations, and also on privatized companies, these companies are constantly pushing the limits to the regulations for safeguarding the environment in favor of more immediate benefits that feed on capitalism. By passing the motion, the Energy Commission of Malaysia is able to take the appropriate measures to safeguard the supply of these energy resources and minimize the carbon footprints in our operations. Why do we say so? National decisions are more bounded by the very laws we impose. That's why it's so important. Number two, we tell you that we are more bounded by global promises and national agendas that are in line with the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations. Therefore, it takes the policy to a higher degree of accountability than developing states or licensed public companies or privatization as opposed by side opposition. So there is a global shift towards renewable resources that should be accelerated through nationalization, which I will touch on. Coal resources in Malaysia make up the second largest electricity supply in the country. Yet at the rates we are consuming in, coal mines centered at Sabah and Sarawak are set to deplete within just 6 years. The questions on developing states that have scarce energy resources and overcoming the geographical constraints in Sabah and Sarawak to energy poverty. There is now a full burden on government to provide more renewable energy resources to one, firstly, be a more compatible nation, and number two, as the decision maker to the state of energy resources in the country once it is nationalized. We tell you that There are more national means in bringing in the renewable resources and technologies by multilateral deals with key players of the solar technology industry like Germany and Japan, without having to wait for foreign introduction that serve outside the benefits of the general public. We look at this motion not only for the sustainability of the resources, but the sustainability of our ecologies themselves, to not deplete them, to not depend on them, because at the end of the day, it's never a sustainable option for the developing states. Nationalizing energy resources secures economy, people, and environment, proving our case to overcome the disparity in sustainable development in the nation. A more sustainable future now lies with side government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Second Speaker of the Government. I would now like to call upon the Second Speaker of the Opposition to deliver their speech.
Wait. Where's the timer?
The timer will show up when you begin your speech.
Oh, so only when I start speaking, it will show up.
Yep.
Oh, okay. State government is living in a socialist utopia that isn't as beautiful as they propose. A very good morning, everybody. First, a few points of rebuttal. Regarding their mechanism saying that they will pay compensation to a previous private company. Yes, it sounds nice, right? But the thing is that these countries, remember, they're developing nations. They are poor in the first place. So in order to achieve a nationalized company, where do you get that money to buy a previous private company? If that country wants to get money for compensation, this means that the country have to borrow money from other country or simply printing out money, which means hyperinflation and putting country into debt, which cannot be achieved on their side. Second, regarding economy sustainability, notice this throughout their speech. The only example they brought up was Malaysia. There is so many other developing nations out there where they didn't care to give you an example. The thing is that there are so many companies where nationalized in other countries fail in the end and goes bankrupt or put the country into such a big burden that they could not recover until today. Look at Russia, look at Mexico, look at Venezuela. In the end, all these companies failed simply because they couldn't sustain this company because it's using too much. And at the same time, because of the lack of competition, lack of innovation, they couldn't produce that much of energy to use it for exportation. And without exportation or less exportation, your country is basically receiving less revenue at the end of the day. Now, let's talk about what they failed to do. All they said was about Malaysia taking state by state. We, our side, will tell you from a broader perspective, giving you example in an international scale. And regarding affordability, yes, in fact, on our side, we achieve affordability better because this company, just imagine, company ABC, they do not want to see other company getting more customers. So in order to do so, there is now a competitive price that exists within these companies to make sure that they are always providing the best or at least the most cheapest and affordable price so that more customers will come to them. Now, done with my rebuttal, moving on to our second argument. On our side, we maximize efficiency in this industry. Two reasons why bad government management will happen in their work. First, government having more priority. Second, political influence. First, let's talk about government having more priority, comparing private company to state-owned company. For private company, it is up to that individual owner to tailor the operation to be more efficient and more cost-saving. At the same time, government is unable to take cuts from these companies' revenue, meaning by the end of the day, there's more revenue left for this company to obtain better innovation, more advanced technology. With more advanced technology, not only can you produce more oil and use it for exportation, more money comes into your country. At the same time, your company will be expanding at a higher rate compared to their side due to lack of competition. And when a company grows and expands at a high rate, meaning that more people are going to get jobless because more people get employed, and it is better on our side because people's purchasing power increase. Now, what happened to a state-owned company? In fact, for state-owned company, government get direct revenue cut from these companies. Yeah, sure. For long short-term benefit, yes, it sounds good because now the people are subsidized, the people get their healthcare, welfare, and all these things. But they don't realize that this is actually unsustainable in the long run. So why is that true? Because these government will be becoming too relying and too dependent on these state-owned company and keep taking revenue from these company. And what happened when this company all of a sudden failed to do so? Like maybe they cannot chase up with other company due to the lack of competition on their side. The government cannot just stop catering their citizens. They still have to get money to support their citizens. So what do? In order to do so, they will be simply printing out money, simply borrowing money, putting country into a big debt, hyperinflation, and at the end of the day, more people loses their job in their side. Let me give you an example of Venezuela, a third world nation. Let me remind you again. Nationalize their crude oil company, PDVSA. Two horrendous outcomes. First, the government mishandled the profit, using the profit earned by this company blindly to fulfill country development plan, overspending it on social welfare program. Second, they're currently suffering the Dutch disease, which means that the government putting too much of emphasis and effort into building up this oil industry and ignoring other industry at the side, getting ignored and pushed to a side. And what happened? I'll accept you in a while. And what happened when these companies what happened when these crude oil companies failed in the end? Now there's no other company to save Venezuela's economy. I'll take a POI first. Sorry.
Thank you for the POI.
Sorry. Moving on. Let's talk about second reason: political influence. A state-owned company, it is up to the government to elect the board of directors. And most often than not, only loyalists get to hold high position. Just look at TNB, chairman, Matzil Zalid, a BN politician. And any employees who were to speak against their ruling government are at risk of getting fired. Yes, your POI.
It is important to highlight that the parameter set on the government side is already in Malaysia, and we're talking about developing states in Malaysia.
Let me tell you, that is basically spiraling. How can you make such a wide topic? The motion basically tell you developing nation. Our whole world, not only Malaysia is a developing nation, there's so many other developing nations out there. Yes, I agree Malaysia is a developing nation, but is Malaysia striving with so many companies getting nationalized, with Tenaga Nasional, with Petronas and so on getting nationalized? Do you think Malaysia striving compared to US, a highly capitalistic country? No. Moving on. So what happened on your world where this government elect a person with minimum qualification, but simply because he is a loyalist to run this state-owned company? Obviously, he's going to mismanage the company or use the revenue earned to cater his citizen just for the fact that he wants his citizen to continue supporting his political party. Or worse, this money will not even flow to the citizen, but instead back into his pocket. This is bad in their side, because people are now not promoted by hard work, but rather through personal connection and personal political belief, which eventually leads to brain drain. Let me tell you what is brain drain, right? Example, Bobby is the very few engineer left in Nigeria, a developing nation. And at the same time, he's not a loyalist. He knows that if he chooses to stay in Nigeria and work for that company, he wouldn't be getting a position that suits his qualification. So what would Bobby do? Bobby would rather leave Nigeria, work for ExxonMobil in US, improve US economy, improve ExxonMobil's technology instead of his own motherland. And this is bad for every single developing nation out there, because this means that Nigeria have to keep spending millions into their education sector just to produce intellectual and citizens who are eventually going to leave their country and work and help an already developed nation, making the developing nation more at the back and a developed nation to keep progressing. But why wouldn't this happen on our side? This wouldn't happen on our side. So once again, this private company, they're profit driven. They do not want other company to take over them. So in order to do so, they will find way to incentivize this intellectual of this specific country to remain in their country and work for their company. This is good for our side because our talent is not flowed to other country, but stay back in our country to improve that existing developing nation. So in conclusion, what have side opposition shows you? Side opposition show you that on our side, with competition, there's more employment and the company will be expanding at a higher rate. Second, we told you that maximizing efficiency is important on our side and cannot be achieved on their side because most likely people who are going to run this state-owned company are people who are unreliable. With that being said, thank you.
Thank you very much, Second Speaker of the Opposition. Now I'd like to call upon the Third Speaker of the Government to deliver their speech.
Hello, am I audible? Am I clear? Okay. A very good day, I bid to the members of the House. As a senior minister, I fully support the motion put forward by the Prime Minister. That is, this House believes that developing states should nationalize the energy resources. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, what the opposition has been trying to say is completely baseless. Well, they may sound good, but I plead to all members of the House to please take a closer look at what I have to say. And to start things off, I would like to address the fact that the opposition as a whole has gotten the whole definition of this motion completely wrong. So what we define nationalization is what we define developing states is as states in Malaysia under the federal government that have a HDI below the national average, such as Kedah, Perlis, Pahang, Terengganu, Kelantan, Sarawak, Sabah, and HDI is an index of life expectancy, education, and per capita income. Nationalization is the transfer of ownership in the local government into the central government. And energy resources are the resources that are mainly used in Malaysia and are national gas, coal, oil, hydro, and renewable energy. Well, the only reason why the opposition has chose to go with the definition that they have gone with is to just safeguard their side, because they know in our side there is no way of them winning. So to start things off, the second speaker of the opposition started off by saying that, well, we the government is the party that is living in a utopian world. Well, it is true. The honest truth is that they are the ones who are living in the utopian world, because they fail to realize that there's so many side effects. Well, they keep harping on the fact that they are money driven, and they don't realize that when they are money driven and they allow these privatized companies to grow in our company, they don't realize that because of the competition that they say so, this competition will cause them to exploit all the resources in our country. And not only will they shorten the already existing 5 years into, who knows, 2 or 3 years, it'll also spoil the environment, all the nasty gases being released into the atmosphere. See, the opposition is only looking at the surface, and they're not looking at the deeper undercurrents that is flowing through this issue. And the first speaker of the opposition stated on the fact that uh, there will be it'll lead to a lack of competition. Well, to this we say that now in a nationalized world where the competition is now in an international level, it is now we are competing at a larger scale. We are now stepping up the game, as we have seen with Petronas. Petronas has already been doing this and slowly trying to reach out to other countries. And to this argument, I have 2 points to oppose to them. Experience that we have with Petronas shows that national objectives can still be achieved. There is still a lot of efficiency. They cannot just simply blame and say that there's no efficiency, and they're always just assuming that, oh, the government won't do this, the government won't do that. They're not doing research, and they are the ones that actually accused us of doing a lack of research. Well, we, the government, are prepared today with all the facts and necessary statistics to prove to all of you that nationalization is the way to go. Even if we give the benefit of the doubt that the country internally has less competition, there is more planning involved, as still it is a federal plan. Instead of focusing on competition as a goal, we set the goal to adhere to. Plans are now much more well executed without internal hurdles. There is now more importance in environmental and economic sustainability than it is about competition to gain revenue and to maximize efficiency. And again, to touch on the fact that the opposition keeps saying that, well, that when there's no sorry when there is competition there'll be growth. Well, I'm no sorry. Well, when there is growth, yes, there might be growth, but at what cost? At what cost, my dear opposition? Are you okay with having growth when they are already depleting our already very little energy resources that is left? And are you okay knowing that they are spoiling our environment? Are you okay? Sorry, are you okay with letting these? Are you okay with letting these private companies to exploit our nation and use the money for their own country's growth? For their own company's growth. These private, no, sorry, these companies do not really care about Malaysia. They care about themselves. They care about growing their own self, and they do not care at all about Malaysia. And this is a huge issue that we need to stop before it becomes something bigger. Yes, please.
Okay, you say that they only care about their own growth, but actually their own growth actually leads to more money going into the country through tax. So please explain why them growing is a bad thing.
It's such a small percentage, my dear. Are you okay with is money a compensation for environmental loss? Are you saying that with money you can compensate for the environmental loss, the damage to the environment? Are you saying that you can pay to fix the environment? Is that what the opposition is trying to bring here? Well, moving on to the second speaker. Well, the second speaker touched on the fact that, again, there is a lack of competition, and they said that it'll achieve more affordability. Well, in order to achieve more affordability, you need mass production. What do you need to do in order to have mass production? More use of the natural resources. Again, it's the same loop that they're stuck in. They're just stuck on the fact that they're still stuck on the surface level, that these privatized companies will be able to grow and to grow, but they don't realize the effects, that
You're
how
right.
much it damages our country. Yes, please.
So state government is keeping telling us that you guys will not exploit on environment, right? So, but if you don't exploit an environment and you don't get out oil, how are you going to make sure that your country has enough oil for exportation? And if you're so scared of getting oil, how are you going to sell this oil and get money?
Okay, my dear opposition, well, the truth is, well, we when we nationalize, our goal is no more to be the best company, to be the number one company in the whole world. Our goal is now to provide enough for our country and to provide more revenue for our country. We are not like these money hungry companies who are just leeching off of each other in each other's country to exploit the environment. And we also calculate how much time do we need and how slow do we need to use our resources so that we have time to implement other renewable resources in areas like Sabah and Sarawak, where the coal resource will run out in the next 5 to 6 years. Mr. Speaker, members of the House, I know it's your wish to hear now what is true rational from us. Therefore, allow me to sum up the government's arguments. We believe that developing states should be nationalized because what we want to do is is to create is to overcome disparity in sustainable development. And our first point is that nationalizing energy will lead to economic sustainability. What we are trying to do here is to ensure that these states have both a sustainable source of income. We do this by giving the states incentives and a secure supply of energy resources, as this is not the smartest move to depend on these energy resources, as they have their limitations, especially in developing states. Then our second argument is social development. We realize there is an inequality in access to services like electricity supply and fuel as the basic resource for social development. By nationalizing, we are now able to provide better access to the energy mix of Malaysia, and states now no longer have to be burdened. Finally, it is environment. The government realizes that it is now an urgency to introduce more renewable energy operations and renewable technology for biomass, solar, and there's a lot of untapped potential, like 30 billion potential revenue and 66,000 new jobs. A more sustainable future now lies with side government, and we mitigate the presence of, like, the opposition side of companies that are constantly pushing the limits to regulations. Mr. Speaker and members of the House, before I take my seat, allow me to make a quick comparison. In our world, we are able to overcome disparity in sustainable development, prepare a more green, sustainable future for Malaysia. And on their side, they just widen the gap between the rich and the poor, and they are still stuck with states that are still developing and still have a severe lack of economic growth. And in fact, it will worsen their environmental status. With that note, never been proud to propose.
Thank you very much, the Speaker of the Government. I would now like to call upon the third Speaker of the Opposition to deliver their speech.
Now, firstly, good morning, everyone. My name is Ganka Hong, and I'm the third speaker for opposition. Before we go on with anything, right? This is a debate, not an argument. So I'd like to clarify some common ground. What we want to do right now is to find a way to make these developed states developed, correct? We can all agree on this. So we want a sustainable economy. But remember this, you guys also said it, you guys agree. We all agree we want a sustainable economy to develop these developing states. That's what we agree on. But here we are debating which part is more beneficial. Now, before we begin with anything, you guys, I don't really see the motive, how you're going to do it. Because we want to create a better economy, but you guys spout statistics. I'm not trying to be rude, but you give the benefits without stating how it actually occurs. We do not understand. I'm sorry, but I really don't understand if you just spout the benefits, but not the method. Now, the first speaker, it states that definition of developing states is states in Malaysia under the government that have a below average HDI. Now, sorry, my voice kind of, okay. But did you know that according to Wikipedia, the actual meaning of developing states is small island developing states? This actually means that they are developing countries. It's according to Wikipedia, you can search it yourself. They are developing countries, according to Google itself. And then your burden of proof is that developing states are able to stand up on their own and ensure that the gap of developing states and developed states are closed. So create wider competition. What I do not understand about this is, if it's a developing state, how is it supposed to compete with the other top dogs in other countries and other markets? You guys do not state a stakeholder. We do not know who's involved. And your mechanism, you don't really tell us how you're going to do this. You say we nationalize, we nationalize, we nationalize. But nationalizing, as stated by our definition, is taking a private company that's already established and letting the government take over. That's the mechanism. Now all of us understand. Now, the points were that the energy resources in UK and China show fragility, but they are not developing. And even if you want to say the energy sectors are unstable, they just go back to normal. This was old news. Now you won't just say, okay, UK is suffering in this sector of energy. They're doing fine because it's privatized. There's really no problem. And one of the other points that you guys want to point out is electricity coverage. Now, please understand that the energy industry is not like other industries. The energy is a necessity. You can survive without a $1,000 iPhone, but you can't survive without energy. And because of this, did you know that there are antitrust laws and the government actually regulates this really, really strictly, really strongly, regardless if you're privatized or if you're government. And now, the main thing that you guys want to keep proposing, this economic sustainability. But as we stated, when you take over a company, a government is bound to take cuts from them to put into other sectors. This sounds good at first, right? You're putting money into the country, but also point this out. The companies are losing money. Who points out that? No one states how the company is unable to grow because they now have less money. And guess what? They are developing state. They need sustainability. They need these companies to succeed. Hold on, I'm explaining my point. But when they take money from the companies, how is the company supposed to succeed? You're literally taking revenue to put it into the now without letting these companies grow. You say that the tax is very minuscule, but if the company is huge, they earn billions or hundreds of millions. Even if a tiny amount of that, let's say 5%, it's still millions and millions that can go into the country. The bigger the company gets through privatization, the more money still comes to the country, thus solving our problem. When the companies grow directly, there will be more money in form of tax going to the government. So the developing state is able to develop when these companies develop. So you get it now, right? These companies, they grow. When we privatize it, we allow for this better growth, and then government can directly benefit when they grow because of the tax that they get. So this is the premise here. Now, another point that they want to point out is rural areas are left behind and how price is, they can change it. There are two things to this. Firstly, competition. Competition is directly to price. Companies won't simply increase the price of energy, because like, if this company charges me 10 cents more for, it's just electricity. It's not like electricity you can get so much better. It's still electricity. I'll go to the cheaper company.
POI?
Okay, yes, POI.
Then you're saying that the people that are already underprivileged to nowhere of energy coverage should just choose a private company that they should buy from.
No, this is changing. I'm going to go into this, right? Now, what you guys wanted to point out was that these poor people, they just pick from one of the private companies. That's literally what happens in government side as well. You're literally picking, but you have no choice now. It's literally just that one company that the government wants to prioritize. You now only have that one sector instead of being able to choose. Choice is lost. Now, in order to further elaborate, rural areas are left behind. I already stated this. Energy is a necessity, not a want. It is strongly regulated by government. And even in America, those places, you see that their underdeveloped parts are still more developed than many parts in Malaysia. And, Malaysia is actually nationalized. I'm just going to point this out. I'm going to elaborate on it later. Rural areas will not be left behind because of these antitrust laws and the fact that the government restrains it so strictly, because it's a necessity, not a want. It's a totally different industry. Okay, now the second speaker. The second speaker, I'm pretty sure she gave a POI about how nationalizing actually creates greater competition. This doesn't exist, okay? Because all of your points, regardless if you say first, second, and third, all your points still apply. What you're trying to say is, we can't develop an economy, and you guys keep stating the benefits of nationalization, but none of you state how you are going to nationalize it and how it's going to help them in the future. I have, however, proved it. I have proved that it's not sustainable if you take the cuts from the company. It doesn't help the country whatsoever. Okay, So nationalizing does not create better competition. They cannot compete in other larger countries. Malaysia can't compete with America. We are a developing state. There's no way that we will be able to compete with them. So when there's privatized companies, we create competition inside the country. They help the country slowly grow. It's not like you can go from a developing state to suddenly competing with the top dogs in the industry. So if we want to put this as a whole, right, nationalizing, it may seem sweet at first, but there is this saying where you suffer earlier, but enjoy the fruits of your labor later. It is what we are trying to prove. Why not have these companies provide a bit less at the start? Obviously, it's going to be a slow start. But once these companies find their footing and develop, it helps developing states much more, creating a much more sustainable economy for the future. And so, thus, us as opposition, we strongly disagree with today's motion.
Period of 3 minutes is given to each team to prepare for your reply speeches. All right, your 3 minutes are over. I now call upon I now call upon the opposition to deliver their reply speech.
my fellow judges, and Mr. Speaker. Just imagine this. If I all of a sudden took away your baby and just compensating you with 100 ringgit, how would you feel? You feel sad because this isn't justice. And this is what side government is trying and one thing and planning to do in order to achieve their socialist utopia. First, let me introduce you to today's debate clashes. First, about growth. Second, competition. And third, sustainability. Sorry. First, let's talk about growth. Yes, on both sides, there is growth. But then the difference is that in government world, the state-owned company growth is that it will accelerate at the very beginning, but slowly decline afterward due to lack of revenue to improve their technology. And when your technology is not good, how are you expecting that country to be striving in an economic international scale? You couldn't, because other developed nation has much more advanced technology to extract more oil for exportation. However, on our side, even though during the beginning, the growth will be very slow, but at least it is sustainable and it is stable. So throughout, yes, in the beginning, it would be slow, but slowly when they have more revenue, not only will they be paying more tax for that country, meaning more citizens will be getting the benefit, but at the same time, there is more revenue for that company to expand their technology and innovate their technology, meaning that they will be producing more oil with a lower price, meaning that they will produce more at the cost of just a little amount of money. And with this exportation, this product for exportation, it can very much help the country to elevate from poverty because more people get jobs. Second, let's talk about competition. Once again, competition is mutually exclusive and will only exist when these companies are privatized. Because once again, this company, they are profit driven. They will do anything to make sure that their profit is high. And yes, this might sound bad, right? But in fact, you must consider the effect of a capitalist. Yes, a capitalist might have an idea of getting more money, but at the same time, they provide so many benefits for the citizen. They expand their company and hire more workers. And getting hire more workers, isn't that a good thing for a developing state? Because these people in developing state who used to have low paying job and now they have a better job in a private firm, they get a higher salary. With more money, you can have greater purchasing power and more people get to buy things, and that is how you develop a nation. But what happened on your side without competition? First, your company wouldn't even expand at a high rate. Yes, there will still be people getting jobs, but at what rate? There'll only be, that's on your side, the people getting job would just be this a little bit, but on our side it will be this much. So we can all agree on this. Third, let's talk about sustainability. Economic sustainability is easy to be proved on our side, and we have told you how we do so. But regarding environmental, yes, sure, both sides will violate environmental law, and that is the truth. But the thing is that side government failed to tell us how their side would not violate environmental law. And the thing is that if they violate environmental law, the justice system would be less harsh on them simply because they are the government, and government can just simply threaten this justice system to not punish them, which is something that which wouldn't happen on our side, since the country and this private company is two separate things. So now, opposition today, they failed to give us a clear definition. They set a motion that is very biased by only considering Malaysia in this topic. They only provided A equals to B, B equals to D, hence A equal to D. And that is something that the judge, you shouldn't buy a point that is not supported with sufficient reasoning. So what has side opposition successfully proven you today? We've proven you how this country, with more employment, more people are getting jobs and personal income can increase, and which eventually help this country to not be a developed state anymore, but become a developed nation. With that being said, side opposition today have clearly won today's debate.
Thank you very much, Second Speaker of the Opposition. Now I would like to call upon the government to deliver their reply speech.
Ladies and gentlemen, the parameter set by side government was already accepted on the very first speaker of the side opposition in the first place. The burden on side opposition has not been lifted. They still cannot prove how private companies are able to make a better sustainable future for our people and for the economy. The burden proof. What do you mean that we don't have a mechanism? On our side, we provide the House with a reliable mechanism to say that the decision making and all resources in the country goes to the Energy Commission, and the Energy Commission is able to distribute that for the betterment of the nation. And we have already decided on that on the very first speaker of our side. There's a lot of assumptions going on side opposition, and they have a very iceberg idea that revolves around money and how it can help the nation. The thing is, money is not everything for a nation. There is always the environment that needs to be preserved in order for that money to still build up. There is always social development that is supposed to be there to back up your nation. Money is not everything, and money on our side is used to optimize on those other sectors. It is simply an assumption on side opposition, firstly, to say that the Energy Commission is unreliable, that federal governments are unreliable, because it is empirically untrue. Look at the nationalized Petroleum National Berhad. We have already stated time and time again that they have the expertise from past experiences. And further competition on a global scale, Petronas has always been a proud proponent to other energy sectors of other companies, of other nations. We say that nationalization through Petronas, for one example, is always the best option for our nation, and we can already see that it's empirically true on our side. We tell you that why do we have to talk about the other nations when the problems already exist in our country? The disparity between the developing states and the developed states currently already exists in our country, and that is what side government here today is supposed to mitigate by nationalization. That idea of unity, of development throughout the nation is supposed to be there. It's supposed to bring up the developing states to have more development in them. And therefore, the parameters set by side government has already stated to you that this motion should be on the pretext of Malaysia. We should talk about Malaysia before thinking of other developing states. The developing country of Malaysia has a potential future with nationalization. In their world, they are making a developing country and its states itself give up their revenue to give away their baby and not get any money back, little to no money back. And we tell you that the justice system on our side is even harder, directly on the United Nations rather than the federal government's regulation. Quote unquote, they said that private companies are profit driven. We tell you that it's very ironic that there is a sustainable future on their side, because you get the sweetness of revenue from private companies, but suffer the bitterness of not even having energy resources because of such finite nature in our country. You are depleting all the energy resources for immediate benefits. And that is what we have already proposed. On our side, we move on for economic sustainability. Still no absolute response from them. We move on for social development. No response. For the environment, literally no response for the and we feel more functional and long-lasting economies with the energy resources themselves. We transmute the value of resources to a greater extent for the developing states. On social development, we extend to the underprivileged, reduce the burden on the state governments to actually kickstart operations for more human development and prosperity. The mechanism has already been set, yet side opposition does not see that. The efforts to safeguard the environment, regulate energy operations to a higher degree of accountability, to overcome the disparity in sustainable development within our nation, we ultimately urge the House to pass this motion without any amendments.
Thank you very much, second speaker of the government, for concluding the debate. Now we will have a few minutes break while the judges finalize their decision and confer on the best speaker.
Alright, judges. Now I'll assign you to your own breakout room so we can discuss about the results.
Okay.
Kindly leave the breakout room once you are done. Don't leave the meeting, leave the breakout room only. All right.
Okay, sure. All right. Have you teleported us to the rooms? Not yet, right?
You need to accept it.
Okay, okay, all right.
Ni kena swipe. Cuba.
Smooth like butter, like a criminal undercover. Don't pop like trouble, breaking into your heart like that. Cool shade stunner, yeah, owe it all to my mother. Hot like summer, yeah, I'm making you sweat like that. Break it down. Ooh, when I look in the mirror, I'm not too hard to do. I got the superstar glow, so ooh, do the boogie line. A side step right left to my beat. I like the moon, rock with me, baby. Know that I got the heat. Let me show you, 'cause talk is cheap. Side step right left to my beat. Get it, let it roll. Smooth like butter, pour you in like no other. Don't need no usher to remind me you got it bad. Ain't no other that could sweep you up like a rubber. Straight up, I gotcha, making you fall like that. Break it down. Ooh, when I look in the mirror, I'm at your heart to do. I got the superstar glow, so ooh, to the boogie line. Side step right left to my beat. I like the moon, rock with me, baby. Know that I got the heat. Let me show you, 'cause talk is cheap. A side step right left to my beat. Get it, let it roll. Get it, let it roll. Get it, let it roll.
Eyes on my wrist, I'm the nice guy. Got the right body and the right mind. Rolling up the party, got the right vibes. Move like haters. Fresh boy, pull up and we lay low. All the players get moving with the bass low. Got the army right behind us when we say so. Let's go.
Side step right left to my beat. I like the moon, rock with me, baby. Know that I got the heat. Let me show you, 'cause talk is cheap. Side step right left to my beat. Get it, let it roll.
Cool light, cool shade, and you know we don't stop. High light, ain't no. You been like, oh my god. We gon' make it rock in his head. We gon' make it bounce in his head. Hotter, sweeter, cooler, butter.
Get it, let it roll.
Blackpink in your area.
보란 듯이 무너졌어. 바닥을 뚫고 저 지하까지. 엊그처럼 잡겠다고 저 like that. 더 캄캄한 이곳에 shine like the stars. 그 미소를 띠며 I kiss you goodbye.
실컷 비웃어라 꼴 좋으니까 이제 너희 하나 둘 셋.
Ha, how you like that? You gon' like that? Da 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 da. You like that? Bada bing, bada boom, boom, boom. How you like that? Da 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 da. Now, look at you, now look at me. Look at you, now look at me. Look at you, now look at me. How you like that? Now, look at you, now look at me. Look at you, now look at me. Look at you, now look at me. How you like that? 나에게 이른 채로 추락했던 날 어둠한 날 속에 갇혀 있던 날 그때쯤에 넌 날 끝내야 했어. Look up in the sky, it's a bird, it's a plane. Yeah. Bring out the boss, bitch. Yeah. Like pink. Dum 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 dum. How you like that? Dum 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 dum. You gon' like that? Dum 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 dum. How you like that? Dum 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 dum.
I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. I get drunk, wake up, I'm wasted still. I realize the time that I wasted here. I feel like you can't feel the way I feel. I'll be fucked up if you can't be right here. You can't be right, yeah. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. When I'm away from you, I miss your touch. You're the reason I believe in love. For me to trust, and I'm afraid that I'ma fuck it up. Ain't no way that I can leave you stranded, cause you ain't never left me empty-handed. And you know that I can't live without you. So baby, stay. I'd be fucked up if you can't be right here. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay, yeah. I do the same thing I told you that I never would. I told you I changed, even when I knew I never could. Know that I can't find nobody else as good as you. I need you to stay, need you to stay. I need you to stay, need you to stay. I need a lover to keep me sane. Pull me from hell, bring me back again. Play me the classics, something romantic. Giving my all when I don't need. I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it. And I see you, the way I breathe you in. It's the texture of your skin. I wanna wrap my arms around you, baby, never let you go. And I see you, there's nothing like your touch. It's the way you lift me up. Yeah, and I'll be right here
to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
You ain't sure yet, but I'm for ya. All I could want, all I could wish for. Nights alone that we miss more, and days we save as souvenirs. There's no time, I wanna make more time and give you my whole life. I left my girl, I'm in my Yorker. Hate to leave it, call it torture. Remember when I couldn't hold her? Left her baggage for a mover.
I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
I get the feeling, so I'm sure. Hand in my hand because I'm yours. I can't pretend, I can't ignore you right from me. Don't think you wanna know just where I've been. Oh, done being distracted. The one I need is right in my arms. Your kisses taste the sweetest with mine, and I'll be right here with you till the end.
I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it. I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it. I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it. I got my peaches out in Georgia. Oh yeah, shit. I get my weed from California. That's that shit. I took my chick up to the north, yeah. Badass bitch. I get my light right from the source, yeah. Yeah, that's it.
Alright, judges, have you guys done with the result? Alright.
Are we ready to start? Okay, I would now like to call upon Chief Judge Poppy to give his oral adjudication and announce the verdict of today's debate, as well as the best speaker.
Okay, very good morning to all of you. Okay, so first of all, I will hand this session over to Madam Afika because there is a split in the decision. Okay, so Madam Afika will deliver the oral adjudication.
Okay, thank you, Chief Edge. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Good morning, everyone. My name is Madam Afika. I think we had a very, I personally enjoyed myself watching every one of you. So you deserve a big round of applause because you were able to represent your state for the national level debate competition. It is not an easy task, but you did a very good job. Put a tap on your shoulder and say, I did good today. Yeah, you deserve that. Okay, although all the three of us enjoyed ourselves listening to very constructive, informative information coming from both sides, we believe there are a few aspects that you need to improve on for your next round or any other rounds in the future. Okay, all six of you are good speakers. There are a few aspects that you need to improve on. First thing first, there are a lot of information, statistics that's related to your motion of the day. But whatever it is, first thing first, I always believe when it comes to refer to information, it is important for you to use reliable websites to define your definition, to get your statistics, to support your stance, your analysis. Because we noticed that some of your points relied on, I would say, not reliable websites, which in the future there are few websites that you can rely on. And also in the same time, there are some websites, free websites, which anyone can edit information. So be careful when it comes to use information for any websites. Okay, you know which websites to refer to. You guys, I'm sure that you guys are more experts than us when it comes to use information from websites. Okay, number two, when it comes to use information or statistics and whatnot, it is, yes, it is important for you to support your motion, your analysis with statistics. But whatever it is, you need to come back to your stance. You need to come back to what you believe in. For example, you are talking about this house believe that developing states should nationalize their energy sources. You are talking about revenue. You are talking about sources coming from this from the federal government. Whatever statistic you have provided, please go back to your stance. If let's say you are government, you support the motion. If let's say you are opposition, you define defy the statements, because when we listen to your presentation, when we listen to your statistics, at the end of the day, you don't rely back to your stance, and that somehow, me personally, I was quite confused and lost, because at one stand I thought you are the government, and sometimes I thought that you are the opposition. So be careful with that. Whatever opinion, whatever points, information that you present, please go back to your stance. Okay, whatever it is. Okay, for example, the federal government has provided 8 point, as example, jangan quote pula. As example, the federal government has provided 8.5 billion according to blah 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 blah, and this is supporting our stance for today, which is this house believes that blah 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 blah. Go back to your stance. Ingat balik stance you kat mana. Okay, number 2. And then number 3, always believe, you need to look at how you manage your time. If let's say you can't entertain lots of POI at one point, you can just entertain 1 or 2. Don't spend too much time on entertaining, elaborating too much on POI, because at the end of the day, most of the marks will be consist of your content, on your delivery, on your information that you deliver. So time management is very important. Be careful with your time management, because no matter how good you when it comes to speak, but at the end of the day, if you're not good with time management, it doesn't really give you that benefits. Don't you think so? All right. Okay, and then number 3, okay, last but not least, whatever it is, at the end of the day, go back to your motion, go back to your stance, go back to what you believe in. If let's say you want to opt for the opposition, what is your stance? You need to clearly specify what is your stance. If let's say you want to go against the motion, in what stance, in what aspect, in what sentences, in what statements. If let's say you are on the opposition side, why do you opt? Why do you defy the government opposition? Why do you defy the government's punya stance, the motions? Be clear, be affirmative with what you are delivering. Okay? But all in all, we have to come to the agreement that all 3 of us really enjoyed ourselves watching your delivery. You guys did a very good job, and you guys should be proud of yourself. Okay? Whoever wins, go to the next round. Enjoy yourself, but again, whatever it is, this is a learning process. Learning process is the best teacher ever. So have fun and don't feel stressed. That's all.
All right, so I will announce the best speaker first. Okay, the best speaker is awarded to, hold on, just let me double check the name. From opposition 3, Gan Ka Hong. Okay, right, congratulations, Gan Ka Hong. All right, so good job. So as for the verdict for today, so this house believes that developing states should nationalize their energy resources. Stands. So it goes to team government. All right, okay, congratulations, good job. Okay.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you,
Thank you,
everyone.
teacher.
It was a fun debate. Yeah.
On behalf
Thank
of the
you.
House, thank everyone and I congratulate all the debaters on their performance today. And I thank the members of the House for their attentiveness. And this debate is now concluded. Thank you. Leave the meeting room now.
Thank you.